Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson, excuse my language, they're both bullshitting. Okay, they're not taking this fight seriously. If they were taking this fight seriously, we would see them on every single syndicated show out there, all the major networks, all these major shows, and they would be hyping this thing up.
Welcome, everybody, to the Ring Generals podcast. I am Nick Nenad. Alongside me is Easy Eric Santos.
What's cooking, guys?
And, of course, my main man, the RKJ Man.
Y'all notice the stubble? Let's talk that talk, y'all hypocritical. Nick, what's good, my brother? Or should I say Post Malone?
Hey, guys, right here, Eric right here, the Ring Generals. Just wanted to let you know where to find us on social media. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, at the Ring Generals, and also you can check us out on YouTube for further information about whether we're giving you updates about MMA fights, boxing, pro wrestling, breaking news, you name it. We have it all on YouTube, and we have it all on the podcast as well. And Nick, tossing to you, buddy.
Well, I'm always going to do what I need to do, right?
Yeah, of course. Just bend over, man. Not a homo way, you know.
That's what you got to do. Shout out Alex Zane. You'll see that video happen at the end of the podcast. Yeah. Like, subscribe, comment, guys. It helps our videos. It helps our podcast get out more into the ether of YouTube. We're not going to get banned like Belle Delphine. We provide content and not bathwater. So, RKJ, take it away.
Hey, man. You're going to hear classic things like, for instance, when my car caught on fire, okay? And what was one of the craziest episodes ever when I tell the story of how my car caught on fire, or the other crazy things that I've said on this podcast. Just go back and listen. Do yourself a favor right now. Stop what you're doing, and I need you to like this podcast. I need you to comment on this podcast on how great I look and how great my stubble is. And I also need you to subscribe and click the bell for notifications. So as soon as this podcast comes out, that's right, you're going to see it, and you can look at so many good stuff. That's all you got to do. But as always, raise a glass in the sky and salute the Ring General.
Guys, it's been a long time, right? We've been, it's been a lot of busyness in our lives. It's the Christmas season. It's Thanksgiving week. So much to talk about on this podcast. It's if you're wondering why RKJ Man called me Post Malone, it's because go look at my Instagram for Halloween. I dressed up as Post Malone because interesting Ring Generals fact. Right when we were starting, one of our first episodes we ever did back in that old dingy studio, RKJ Man called me Post Malone after I took a picture with my just terrible beard inside the studio. And I did look like Post Malone, and he showed me pictures. So I took it to the max and dressed up as Post Malone. With thanks to my girlfriend who came up with the idea, and we just went all out for it. So yeah, go check that out on Instagram. If you're wondering where Jesse is, he's not here. There's some just personal issues that he's dealing with, so he'll be away for probably the next few podcasts. So we wish him well. We obviously all love Jesse, and we want him here, and he's not going to be here for the next few podcasts, and he will let us know when he's ready, and we will get him right back on. And Jesse's such a fun personality, and we're excited to do this podcast, but also we're missing a guy today, so we're going to do our best to really entertain you guys without Jesse. RKJ Man, let us know who we want to shout out. We have some personal Ring Generals friends too that we've done interviews with that we want to personally give some shout outs to. So I'll let you take it away.
I want to extend a happy birthday to our good friend of the podcast. She did our very first interview with this podcast, right. Alyssa Moreno, formerly known as Kathy Caponelli. Alyssa, I hope you're having a fantastic birthday. Thank you so much. I know I've sent her some messages telling her how much I appreciated her coming on the podcast and how much I was proud of her and the work she's done in the wrestling industry. And she's still killing it. She's still doing her dang thing. And then also shout outs to Alex Zane, man. Alex Zane, who I still owe him some IHOP. I told him I was going to get him IHOP the next time I saw him. So Alex Zane, I will get you IHOP the next time I see you, whenever I see you, because of this global pandemic. But Alex Zane, he is going to be going somewhere major in the next few weeks or months, I hear rumor has it it's going to be to the WWE Performance Center, to NXT. So we could be seeing Alex Zane on NXT television. Who knows? Maybe even on the next NXT. Who knows? But it's going to be fun to see. And I can just remember, Nick, me and you being heavily intoxicated in an IHOP.
Very.
And one of our good friends at the time, she brought him over. We had no clue what we were doing, but we figured out a way. And it turned out to be our highest rated interview podcast we've ever done. So shout outs to Alex Zane, man.
Absolutely. Now, Eric, we have a big podcast, like I mentioned. Tell the viewers what we're going to be talking about today on the podcast.
Man, it's going to be stacked on this one. First of all, this week we're going to be having Roy Jones Jr. versus Mike Tyson coming back. And also we're going to be talking about Survivor Series, lots of things that happened in Survivor Series, also up-and-coming UFC fights. Obviously, I think the big one that has gotten a lot of people to talk about is McGregor is back until next year. The first of 2021, January. So stay tuned for that one. And man, a stacked card for December of UFC. So that one's going to be a tough one. Man, it is a stacked one. You can consider it the SummerSlam of the UFC on this one. But I think a lot of people are right now probably scratching their heads about the ending of Survivor Series, the overall farewell of, or maybe the last time we get to see the Dead Man, the Phenom, the American Badass, the Undertaker.
Yeah,
what do you want to talk about?
Exactly.
I don't know. We got a lot to talk about.
The end.
We got to start with the Undertaker, and we'll get into the actual Survivor Series pay-per-view and what that was about. But crazy enough, guys, right? Survivor Series, 30 years to the day the Undertaker debuted. I always love when stuff like that happens in the world where it ends up being like the exact thing. Like, I don't know. Is that like maybe 30 years in the future, like every date that happened 30 years prior is the same? I don't know if that works that way, but really, really cool. The Undertaker retiring. Now that you can, obviously, we'll give our own opinions about whether we think this is the last time we'll see the Dead Man, the Phenom, the American Badass in the ring or on WWE programming. But it was his farewell. We will give him our own tribute. So I will start. We will go to Ryan, then we'll go to Eric, because I know, Eric, you have a special place in your heart for the Undertaker. So I'll let you go last on this one. Okay. Well, we're just going to give our kind of what the Undertaker meant to us to start this podcast. This will also be branched off into its own separate videos, so you guys can just see, if you don't see anything else from this podcast, you see this part. So for me, the Undertaker holds a very special place in my wrestling heart, and also just in my heart in general, because when I first started watching wrestling back in 2005, the Undertaker was in the first segment I ever saw, and it was one of the reasons that drew me to professional wrestling. And anytime the Undertaker was on TV, it was must-see TV, and that goes on until just last year, WrestleMania 36. And so the Undertaker is, at least in my opinion, he's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of professional wrestlers, and arguably might be considered the best professional wrestler ever. I mean, the guy literally never jobbed to anyone. It's amazing when you look back at his career in WWE, at least. The guy started on top and ended up on top and never really was on mid-carder or anything like that. The guy dominated professional wrestling. The longevity, obviously 30 years is incredible. No one's ever been close to that long in professional wrestling, maybe besides Ric Flair back in the day. And so, the Undertaker, Mark Calloway, he's been in my wrestling life for ever since I started watching wrestling. So for me, he's one of the best of all time. He's in my top 3 for favorite wrestlers of all time. And he'll always hold a special place in my heart as a reason that even this podcast exists. Because if I didn't see The Undertaker 15 years ago, we might not be sitting here talking about a podcast. So that's what he meant for me. RKJ Man, what did The Undertaker mean to you?
Man, The Undertaker is a legend and will forever be a legend in my book. My first experience with seeing The Undertaker was not the Dead Man or Ministry of Darkness Undertaker. It was the American Badass Undertaker in the 2000s, being a huge Attitude Era fan, being a huge Rock fan. all I saw was this guy riding on a motorcycle down
Yes.
to the ring named the American Badass with Kid Rock. I was like, this guy is kind of cool. And it's just amazing. I remember when The Rock came back in 2011 and I was in high school. I was a senior in high school and like I was talking about The Rock all over the place, but all everybody was talking to me about was The Undertaker, man. That man is dead and yet he still chokeslamming people. Like he's still wrestling. Like everybody was talking to me about how great The Undertaker was. Shout outs to my friend Alfred over in the East Coast, over in North Carolina, our unofficial correspondent, as we like to call him over on the East Coast. His favorite wrestler is The Undertaker, and he would just, it's amazing at being a black man how many African American people love The Undertaker. I don't understand it. But like they loved him more than The Rock. I was like, why? But they just loved. There was just something so magnetic and cool about The Undertaker that it was like, oh my God, this is wrestling's version of the Clintons to black people. So it was one of those things where I was like, man, this is a legend in the making right there. And I'm happy that The Undertaker can go off and be at peace. It's tough watching him in these documentaries, just barely able to get out of bed, barely able to do certain things, not enjoy the time with his wife, his kids. He needs the opportunity. He's made plenty of money in his career. Hopefully, I would imagine he saved up his money. He's been smart. He just needs to just enjoy the rest of his life and relax, and just do whatever he thinks is best. So I'm happy that The Undertaker is willing to say so long, farewell. Do I think it's farewell for long? We'll talk about that in a moment because I don't think so.
Eric, obviously, The Undertaker, a big part in your beginning of wrestling too. Just explain to us what The Undertaker meant to you.
How I was introduced to him, it was actually through the wrestling games that we used to have. Me and my sister and my brother. Knowing my sister, she was actually the big Undertaker fan. She would have magazines from him from like the years of 95, 96, and 97. So I was like already sort of familiar with him already by that time. And I think once I did see him on like live television was when he was dressed up as the Ministry of Darkness.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like trying to be one of those kids that was trying to like dress up. If I see something cool on TV, I'll just dress up like one. And then I saw Undertaker having the black cloak, and I just grabbed like I guess like one of my mom's I guess her blankets, and I just put it over my head. It was like, I don't know what it was. I think it was like a black sweater, and so I just try to be like, I guess, the Undertaker. And then obviously seeing that was that was probably one of the first times I saw wrestling. And then it didn't affect me until getting into 2000, seeing him as American Badass. I think at the time people were like, yeah, well, it's The Undertaker, so it doesn't matter if he transitions from Phenom to American Badass, because people have seen him in autograph signings wearing street clothes. So and he's also made appearances on live television with a bandana and like wearing like a regular black shirt. So like this is like nothing new. If you're still kicking ass in there, then I still like you, And Taker has meant a lot to me for, I think the thing that always made me gravitate towards him is projecting his fear onto a lot of the wrestlers, because a lot of the wrestlers, they would always show like fear to him, like the awe-inspiring faces of when they look at their faces whenever they hear the gong sound or whenever they see Undertaker just riding on his motorcycle, whether it be beating them up for respect, beating them down for what is good, or beating them down just for ego. When Undertaker was playing the heel role, it was still like in a way intimidating. Like a lot of the wrestlers were intimidated. A lot of things have been like, for me, his music, his entrance, his wrestling style. To be honest, there's not going to be any other Undertaker. I don't think there's going to be any other Undertaker out there. A lot of wrestlers, a lot of people have been saying, "Oh well, this wrestler is going to be the second coming of the Undertaker." But if anything, he has opened the door for a lot of these dark characters. He's opened the door for characters like Finn Balor, Bray Wyatt, Aleister Black, Kane. The list goes on. So, he's always held a special place and he's always going to be there in the Mount Rushmore of wrestling, in my opinion. And I just hope that maybe one day, if because I don't see this retirement or like this thing about him leaving wrestling. I don't think it's a definite. Yeah. I'm not sure about that. I'm split half and half. One side I want to say he's done. There's nothing else for him to prove, and then the other half I want to say is, yeah, we'll see him in the next pay-per-view. But I think so. But long live the Taker.
Absolutely. RKJ Man, you hinted that you have an opinion about the Undertaker's retirement. Why don't you give that right here?
Well, it kind of connects to what Eric said a little bit. Eric said how there will probably never be another Undertaker. I disagree with that. I think The Fiend is this generation's Undertaker. And I think it only makes sense if you do a Fiend versus Undertaker matchup to have truly be, if that's going to be the Undertaker's last match, it needs to be that. And it kind of goes along with The Fiend kind of getting his revenge back on previous opponents. You saw that with John Cena at this past year's WrestleMania. I guess it's happening now with Randy Orton based off what we saw off Raw a couple of days ago. I think it only makes sense if he faces The Undertaker at next year's WrestleMania and he beats The Undertaker in Undertaker's last match, and he takes all of the powers that the Undertaker's had, that the Undertaker has had over that time. And what amazing sight it would be is that at the end of that WrestleMania, at the end of that match, if The Fiend takes all the powers that the Undertaker has, and the Undertaker is just Mark Calloway. So I think for an amazing match like that and a good payday, I think the Undertaker will come back and it'll make sense. I know I've seen some people say Undertaker and Sting, they're way too old to do that.
Yeah, no way. Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah, should have done it from the beginning.
And you should have did that in 2015, 2014 when you had the chance to do that. I know, Eric, I sent some stuff to the group chat a couple months ago with some Sting videos, and I really enjoyed that build up with him and Triple H, but it should have been Undertaker at the end.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it should have been him from the very beginning. It's like Sting, if you're coming back, then obviously you did say on your word that you were going to go up against Taker, but I guess Triple H just hopped on the opportunity and then decided to take the event to himself and the match for himself and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take this opportunity, because don't worry, like next year Taker and Sting will fight, and that never did happen. So, well,
with two 50-year-old dudes like that, there can never be a next year. There might not ever be a next year. So, and we all know what happened with Sting, and now Undertaker is quote unquote retired. But if I'm Vince McMahon, I would have had the Fiend interrupt the whole ceremony and set something up. Honestly, on Sunday, that's what I thought was happening. I was that would happen.
RKJ, I was thinking the exact same thing, and I was waiting for when he was walking up the aisle for him just to start to get choked out by Bray Wyatt, the Fiend. You know how he puts his fingers down someone's mouth. I was fully expecting there to be a shot, and then all of a sudden the lights turn off and you hear the sound, and Undertaker's getting choked out, and that's what sets up the WrestleMania. To be honest, that's what should have happened. But you know, I think also Vince sees 30 years in the making. Right, wants to give the ceremony to Undertaker. But Undertaker, one thing I guess we probably didn't mention was how giving the Undertaker was as a wrestler, too. We hear a lot of selfishness in professional wrestling. Guys want to be on top. Undertaker kind of was just the top, like, what's the word for it? Like the number one employee. He just did whatever Vince said, you know? And when there was stuff,
loyal, he disagreed. Loyal was the thing that kept him,
very loyal, and so it would have been. I think Undertaker would be down to do something like that. Maybe it's filmed, right? If we come into WrestleMania and it's a situation where we have limited fans and it's not the same thing, maybe the best thing to do with an Undertaker situation, considering his age and his wrestling ability, maybe it's something filmed like they did at last year's WrestleMania 36. I don't know, but yes, RKJ Man, I completely agree with you. I want to see the Fiend and the Undertaker do something, and it makes total sense with what they've been doing recently with the Fiend's character. I wish the Fiend was built up a little bit more, and a lot of the BS hadn't happened with. But nonetheless, how do you recover something like that? Right, that does just as much, does just as much good as all the other stuff did bad.
Yeah, I mean,
honestly, with John Cena, that John Cena match. Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania, he recovered, I think.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Well, this also goes back to which retirement do you think was probably better, like for his way to go out for a Taker? This one or the one where he lost to Roman Reigns? Because a lot of people thought that he lost to Roman Reigns, that was probably like his good way to be sent out, you know.
RKJ, what's your thoughts on that question?
Yeah.
That's a great question, Eric. And this isn't going to be a complete answer, but it would have been perfect for him to lose to Roman Reigns if the streak was on the line. It would have been perfect for him to lose to Roman Reigns if the streak was on the line. It didn't mean as much at that point that he got beat by Roman Reigns, because he had gotten beat years later against Brock Lesnar. So I think this one wins, and it's only because they tried to do that farewell matchup with nothing important being on the line. The streak was not on the line in that matchup. So if the streak was on the line and Roman Reigns said, I've got to win this match is more important than the championship itself, then it would mean way more than this. But I think, this Survivor Series, being the pandemic, being everything going on, to see something as familiar as The Undertaker and those legends, I think it means a little bit more because of that.
Well, yeah, and also like the fact that it's the 30 years to the day thing, like how do you not capitalize on that, right? Like that'd just be a crazy missed opportunity. An interesting thing that, Eric, I'm glad you asked that question, because there was an interview with Ariel Helwani that we were just talking about before the podcast. The Undertaker, out of character in his living room or in his office or whatever, doing an interview as Mark Calloway. He revealed a lot of interesting things that I didn't know up until, a week ago. And some of those things were that he actually said that he preferred the streak would end it with Roman Reigns. He actually personally said that as well, which I think that's that's where a lot of wrestling fans' minds are, that Roman Reigns is clearly the top dog now, and so it's why not the Undertaker give that the quote unquote the reins to Roman Reigns, no pun intended. Another thing he discussed, and this is very, very interesting, and he said this with his words, and I don't know if he misstepped. He said that when the streak was broken by Brock Lesnar, Vince told him before the match Lesnar was going over. That was something I hadn't heard, which means that Vince broke the streak, and that concussion wasn't the reason that the match ended, that the streak was over. And that's the first time I'd heard that. Had you guys heard that rumor before, that Vince had planned for the Undertaker to lose that match no matter what, and that the injury just made it look worse? I hadn't heard that. Had you guys heard that before?
Beforehand, there were rumors about that. There were plans that Vince was going to have the streak broken, but I didn't thought it was confirmed. I thought it was one of those things where it's like, oh, it's gonna be CM Punk breaking the streak. Oh, it's gonna be
of course,
so Triple H breaking the streak. I thought it was gonna be one of those things, but then after what happened, I was blown away. But then the concussion thing, that part I didn't know about. I didn't see that coming. Yeah. And then many years later, Taker says that, oh well, he doesn't even remember that night.
Craziness. RKJ, had you heard that? Had you heard of that before? That Vince just decided in the locker room before the match that Undertaker was going to lose. Had you heard that before?
Yeah, I did. I think I've seen the reports. I don't know if it was Meltzer or I don't know who it was, but I did see the reports that Vince McMahon prior, like in the weeks before, said, oh, Undertaker's going over. And then the day of, it changed. And he just made the decision, okay, I'm giving it to Brock Lesnar. And it's not really something different. We've seen Vince McMahon in past WrestleManias make a move at the last minute. I mean, the next year, what happened with Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Brock Lesnar? Vince McMahon at the very last minute changed the matchup from Roman Reigns winning to Seth Rollins winning, and one of the greatest finishes of all time for WrestleMania. And he's done it in the past. I believe there was an issue with Scott Hall and Stone Cold Steve Austin, I believe at WrestleMania 18, and Scott Hall, I think, was going to win, and he changed it. He was like, no, Stone Cold's winning. You can't show up drunk or something like that. I think that was allegedly what happened.
They probably both were drunk for that pay-per-view.
Well, I know Austin was pissed that night.
I mean, none of them wanted to be there anyway, so somebody had to win the match. But and so it's not surprising that it happened. My only thing was we didn't know what Roman Reigns was going to be at WrestleMania 30. Think about it. He was still with the Shield. yes, we could kind of tell what was going on and what was going down, but the Shield was still going strong at that time. You know, they were in a good upper card match, but they weren't in one of the top matches of WrestleMania. So we didn't know what Roman Reigns was going to be at that time. But I think Vince McMahon looked at Brock Lesnar and said, Brock Lesnar's losing his steam a little bit, and we have him on hook for a couple more years. We need to get him something to kind of re-jumpstart his character. And I think this was the perfect way, you know, with him losing the streak. It shocked me. Like, I can still remember exactly with that when the referee hit 3, I was like, wait, it's over? Like, I thought that there was a mistake happening. Something was going to change. Everybody and their mom was talking about it. And The Undertaker lost that matchup, and I was shocked. I've also heard rumors that Randy Orton, Eric, was going to actually beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania 21, and then Vince changed his mind. Vince said, no, I'm not going to do that. Undertaker was cool with it. Vince said, no, I'm not going to do that. So a lot of things happen behind the scenes, and it's always cool to see those interviews because you can kind of get an in-depth mind. You can kind of get in deep of what's going on with Vince McMahon's mind.
Here's something else interesting. I want to get to Survivor Series in a second. That Undertaker also released matches that he said if you're not into wrestling, if you're getting started in wrestling, to watch, that you should watch. He cited his matches with Shawn Michaels, and obviously that's obvious. Steamboat, Ric Flair, all that stuff. One of the matches he said was Edge versus Randy Orton, greatest match ever at Backlash. Now, I've never seen that match just because that was in the beginning of the pandemic, and there was a lot of other stuff going on in my life, and it was hard to kind of follow pro wrestling at that point. But for him to say that match is extremely surprising to me, because how could that be better than a lot of I guess, and here's the other thing too, Undertaker's so respectable that I gotta go watch that match now. Like, that's how much I respect The Undertaker. I'm gonna have to go watch that match now, because if The Undertaker told me to watch it, I gotta go watch it. So, what do you guys think about that?
Well, with all due respect to The Undertaker, that's BS. Okay? I mean, look, I respect The Undertaker, and I respect what those guys put on in the greatest match ever, but I feel like that's a Vince McMahon plug, Vince McMahon in his ear. And you know what I'm saying? Hey, go and tell them that this matchup was great so we can promote the WWE network. No, that's not something, if I'm going to show somebody, hey, I want you to see this matchup. It's not what I'm going to see. But it goes back to how loyal The Undertaker is. When the whole WCW, WWE thing was going on at the time, Undertaker could have left to go to WCW. Kevin Nash talks about it on those shoots we love to watch. I send you guys all the time. It's a situation where he said it. We had plans for Taker to come over to WCW, but he was just too loyal. And the same character he did after that, the American Badass biker gimmick, he was going to have that in WCW, because you couldn't carry that Undertaker gimmick over to WCW, obviously. So it just shows you how loyal The Undertaker has always been to Vince McMahon in the WWE.
It's there's plenty of Undertaker stories left and right, and I'm interested to see how many more interviews he does, maybe a couple more shoot interviews, and really get the backstory of all these BSK stories and these drinking stories and all these professional wrestling behind the scenes stories. That is kind of the last chapter of The Undertaker that we don't know about. We've heard stories from other people, but just as much as Undertaker's in-ring career is legendary for 30 years, we don't really know what all these stories are true and the backstory. So I'm interested to hear all that. The Undertaker will live on, of course, forever, just telling stories, which is great. All right, so let's move to Survivor Series. I'm just going to go over what happened for anybody that doesn't know it in the quickest fashion possible. And then what we're each going to do is we're each going to give our biggest takeaway from this pay-per-view and just kind of discuss it amongst ourselves. So, of course, we had starting the show, we had Team Raw, Team SmackDown men's Survivor Series elimination match. Clean sweep by Raw. Seth Rollins gives himself up, presumably to go take baby Becky Lynch. And so he's gone, and Raw destroys SmackDown. It's a storyline involving Jey Uso and Roman Reigns. So you're starting the show with the storyline that will end the show, and I'll get to that in a second. Street Profits go over on the New Day in the tag team combination match. Bobby Lashley beats Sami Zayn, Intercontinental versus United States. Pretty dominating win for Lashley. Sasha Banks goes over on Asuka. Team Raw, Team SmackDown Survivor Series elimination match for the women. Clunky ass match, and a storyline revolving around Lana being an outcast. Team Raw ends up winning because of Lana, lone survivor. I wasn't paying attention too much to that match, so maybe one of you guys could educate me on what happened there. And then you had the main event, which was before obviously the Undertaker stuff. Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. Boy, did this match deliver WrestleMania type match, and Roman Reigns technically submits Drew McIntyre after multiple interferences, low blows, and Jey Uso getting involved. So the storyline to begin the show ends up helping the show, or ends up going all the way to the end of the show, and the storyline built throughout the show. Very rare in WWE these days that they do something like that smart. Eric, I'll give you the first take on here. What was the takeaway from Survivor Series besides the Undertaker?
I think the match before the farewell was Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre. Maybe I expected a little bit more because the buildup was actually doing pretty good as far as that goes. I think it felt like in a way kind of recovery from last year's feud that they had back at WrestleMania, and that was their way to try to let's try to upgrade this thing between Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns. Only this time the switch are in reverse. Like the roles have switched. Roman Reigns is the heel, McIntyre is the good guy, the baby face. So I think maybe I kind of want to expect a little bit more from this one. I kind of wanted the feud to go a little bit more further because they did a pretty good job of handling it on SmackDown when Roman Reigns was talking a lot of trash to Drew McIntyre, and this was like, I'm like, wow, like Roman Reigns' mic skills are getting really good. Like as far as a heel, he is like really delivering, and it felt like, okay, I want this feud to go on. But since Survivor Series is over, I guess this isn't happening anymore. I guess they're going to go on separate brands. Roman Reigns is going back to his feud with who was it, with one of the Usos, right? I think and then McIntyre is going to be too busy defending the title on Raw. So maybe I kind of wanted the feud to go a little bit much more further than that, but I get it. Survivor Series, champions versus champions. That's probably my only takeaway. I kind of just wish the feud would go on a little bit. Maybe that's something that kind of helps SmackDown a bit because Roman Reigns, it kind of showcasing him how much of a jerk he is on SmackDown. So and it's proven to be a force to be reckoned with. So like now with the help of Paul Heyman, looks like the future is bright for Roman Reigns on SmackDown as a heel though.
So I'll get my take on Survivor Series, but I know RKJ, you're going to go into elements past Survivor Series, I believe, with your discussion. So I'll give just my general take on it. My biggest takeaway from Survivor Series this year was that the storytelling was very good in a lot of these matches, and not specifically with the matches themselves, but when you looked at a match, and for a wrestling observer as myself, you always look, okay, who should win this match? And in all of the matches, at least I believed that you had the right winner, or at least an outcome that didn't not make sense. Like you had everything at least make sense. And I'm not counting the pre-show battle royal or anything like that. I really liked that they started the pay-per-view with the Jey Uso storyline, him trying to be the team captain, him trying to, look up to his cousin Roman Reigns and get up to him. And I know they had a feud earlier on, and so I don't know too much about that because I wasn't paying attention as much to WWE when that was happening. But I understand the storyline. I understand the family ramifications. I do like that they started the show with a storyline, and midway through the show, they had vignettes and they had, backstage segments. And then the main event involves that same dude that started the show. The storyline continues, and that's the reason Roman wins. I like that Sasha Banks won over Asuka. She needed to win. I like the Street Profits beat New Day. There was no reason New Day needed to win that match. As far as Team Raw, Team SmackDown, those don't matter to me as much, but they told a story in those matches that ended up making sense. Why would Lana end up losing when she's been bullied the last few weeks and going through 9 tables or whatever it was? So that was my biggest takeaway, that WWE went back to the basics and told a story throughout a pay-per-view that kept me interested most of the time. And I think that's what they've been lacking recently. And if this is a good sign when you have the Royal Rumble coming up and WrestleMania, obviously after that. So RKJ, take it away. What was your takeaway Survivor Series?
I'm glad you mentioned Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, because when I look at Survivor Series, I keep saying this on the podcast every year. Survivor Series is the last pay-per-view and the last big WWE event that I pay attention to before we get into 2021. After Survivor Series, I'm focused on football. I'm focused on basketball. There's other things that's going on that I'm more focused on. And I know the events in them, those shows are terrible after Survivor Series anyway. So here's my situation. Here's my thing. I liked, for the most part, what Survivor Series provided. Yeah. And I always look at Survivor Series to see, can I get a little hint of what Vince McMahon is thinking about with WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble? And I think maybe we got something, but I also think it proves how disjointed the plans are going into 2021. And I personally think you need to have your plans ready to go, and you need to have your best stuff ready to go in 2021, because the world could be a lot different in 2021. We hear rumors about a vaccine coming and whatnot. If Vince McMahon is able to have a full stadium worth of fans, you need to provide people with something people are willing to come out all across the world and see something like that, a credible main event. Okay, so let's look at the Drew McIntyre Roman Reigns match. It was a fantastic match, but I'm just curious as to why they gave Drew McIntyre the WWE Championship at this time. What I would have liked to see, what I would have preferred to see, is Drew McIntyre fighting for that championship, and he wins it again at the Royal Rumble. He wins an opportunity again at the Royal Rumble, and then he could possibly, go over. I'm so excited I'm not over a computer. He could go over to SmackDown and face Roman Reigns for that championship. Yeah. I feel like Vince McMahon, blew his load on this matchup and just said, hey, look, we've got to have something big because we got a lot of eyes watching this because the Undertaker's retiring. Let's go ahead and put this matchup on. Okay, and I disagree with that a little bit. And then let's talk a little bit about the Daniel Bryan situation. Daniel Bryan was nowhere to be found on this show. And rumors have it that Daniel Bryan is going to be facing Roman Reigns either at TLC or the Royal Rumble. I don't think McMahon is doing that matchup right now. That is a WrestleMania caliber matchup. I don't know why you would do that right now, except for the fact of the matter being is a couple of things. Number one, you think that you might have a commitment from The Rock to finish this storyline off at WrestleMania next year. If you have a commitment from The Rock, then by all means, blow these matches out of the way to keep our attention on it until The Rock comes back. But I highly doubt that The Rock is coming back. Okay, and then a couple other things. Maybe Vince McMahon, I don't know. Maybe he thinks that something else is going to happen that we don't know about. So I'm curious as to why you're blowing off these matches right now when we need something going into WrestleMania. I talked about it when Roman Reigns turned heel. I said, what is the plan for WrestleMania? Because allegedly Vince McMahon wants Roman Reigns to have that title until WrestleMania. Well, you can't have a top heel without having a top babyface. So who is the top babyface that's going to challenge Roman Reigns if you're blowing through him right now before we even get to WrestleMania?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I'll be honest, RKJ. Roman Reigns is a star right now in WWE, and I think him holding that title, or at least being in the title picture, should be what it is at WrestleMania. It'd be surprising, unless he's facing The Rock without the title, why he wouldn't be in one of the main events surrounding that title. His heel character, like Eric mentioned, is incredible right now, and it's what we all wanted, and it's following through. We didn't think Paul Heyman would be there, which is an added bonus, but. I really am now interested in this Roman Reigns character, and now with his brothers, or excuse me, not his brothers, his cousins, the Usos now potentially getting involved in this. You have really kind of a solid group here of guys going into this WrestleMania season. But you're right. I obviously we have SmackDown this Friday, so we haven't seen what's going to happen with this Roman Reigns storyline. RKJ, maybe if the Undertaker has retired, maybe it's the Fiend. I know that's not top babyface, but maybe the Fiend is the one that goes after Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. It's a way of reintroducing the Fiend character. The Fiend, where does he fit in if the Undertaker isn't there to have a match with? He's got to be in the title picture at WrestleMania, right? You have to put him there. So that's at least who I think, just because of the process of elimination. Maybe he's there on Raw facing Randy Orton, but that's probably going to be, more recent that's going to happen. I think he could go. You take out Randy Orton, then you go to SmackDown. That's at least RKJ. Who do you think besides Daniel Bryan, if they're blowing these people, who is your guess it would be besides The Rock, obviously?
Yeah, besides The Rock, because that would make the most sense considering the storyline with him being the tribal chief. Honestly, I would like to see Daniel Bryan face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Keep them far apart. Keep him feuding with Jey Uso. Have him win the Royal Rumble. Have him jump through hoops to get to Roman Reigns through WrestleMania, and have him beat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. You can go off something with that Fastlane pay-per-view they had a long time ago, when the roles were kind of reversed and Daniel Bryan was a huge baby face and, Roman Reigns was still considered a heel at that time. So, you could do something similar to that. You kind of go off that history. I kind of like how WWE kind of goes off history sometimes between their wrestlers.
Yeah.
I am interested in the Fiend situation, but the problem with the Fiend is you've got to make sure he's credible by the time he gets to Roman Reigns. Okay, we cannot have the Fiend in these crappy matches and these crappy storylines with the Miz. No disrespect to the Miz, but he's not on the level of a Roman Reigns in the WWE. He's not. He's not the future. The Fiend, Roman Reigns and them, they're the future. And then obviously Drew McIntyre is interesting, but you just had Drew McIntyre lose to Roman Reigns. And I'm going to be honest with you, in that last SmackDown before Survivor Series, Roman Reigns sort of buried Drew McIntyre's character. So you'll forever be my favorite number 2. That's a burial right there. So we don't know what's going to happen in WrestleMania. I was mentioning this, and I was mentioning you guys this off air. We don't know if WrestleMania could get pushed back to allow people to come through because of the vaccine. Rumors has it Vince may move it to later on in April. I think he should move it into June or whatnot. Allow people to get that vaccine and come out. How great would WrestleMania be with a big time main event and a full stadium of fans, and it's the first full event in American sports.
Seriously, bro. Seriously.
So that'd be fantastic. But you got to have a main event that draws. And in my opinion, the main event that draws and makes sense is The Rock versus Roman Reigns. It's just, did Vince get a commitment from Roman Reigns? Because he keeps saying these tribal chiefs, and we keep seeing all this history. So I'm thinking, okay, he's got something coming in the plans with The Rock. He has to have something, right? Because I told my parents, I was like, this has to be The Rock that's coming up, because there's just too much history being, laid out in front of us. Too much references and inside references being laid out about our family, the tribal chief. I'm the head of the table. These are keys that you think, no, The Rock is the head of the table. He runs the family. So when are we going to have the two people fighting for who's really running the family?
Yeah, and that could be. I'll tell you, RKJ, you're discussing this. Eric, I want to get your opinion on this too in a second. If The Rock is so famous at this point. I think he has the most followers for like a male or something like that on Instagram. I think The Rock kind of could, like, if The Rock says push WrestleMania back to June, Vince is pushing WrestleMania. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like The Rock. It has to work out, right? I don't want to see The Rock versus Roman Reigns if it doesn't work out, right? Like if we're having some film segment or some weird thing that happened, I want to see a match between the two, and Roman Reigns go over, right? Like I want to see this tribal chief thing get defended. I want to see them both on the mic with Roman Reigns, his mic skills getting better, and obviously The Rock being The Rock. I want to see that. And like you mentioned, with the things looking up, at least as far as the vaccine goes here in the world in general, we can start looking forward to these things potentially being a little different than, let's say, the Royal Rumble or a lot of these other things coming up soon, like the Super Bowl. So we do have like that fantasy thinking of like, well, yeah, if there's like at least 40,000 people somewhere, like you could have The Rock, right? You fill up half the stadium, and we see like Alabama college football games like almost like half filled. So like, why can't 6 months from now we have a WrestleMania stadium half filled or something like that? Or maybe they put it in an arena and fill it there and only have 20,000 people or something like that and go back old school. So I don't know. Eric, I want to get you this opinion before we go to the UFC. Who do you think is the baby face that could face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania?
As of right now, the only guy that I can really think of, and I'm probably going to have to take RKJ Man's advice, it's going to have to be Daniel Bryan. Yeah. But, if you don't have anybody else, then, like you said also, Nick, the thing is, if you're going to have Rock come back, then at least make the feud look legit, make the feud look good. It looks like definitely when Roman and his cousins were feuding, there was some legit heat where you can do it. Like there is some legit heat where you can actually make the feud look really, really real and have like the tribe split. The tribe split. Maybe have Roman attack Rikishi, or maybe have Roman go, attack some of his other cousins. Maybe also probably do something along the lines of just something that can actually make Roman look more of a hated guy, because like, hey, now that you're getting all this heel steam, now time to push it. Thanks to Paul Heyman, having Paul Heyman just whisper all these things in his ear. I think maybe what this can happen was Roman, he can do something along the lines of attacking maybe the Rox's family, like maybe his immediate family, something like that. But I'm just going crazy. I'm just throwing in ideas out there, but just to make the feud more legit and have more heat on it, that's the only way to do it. But if you're not going to have Rock come back, or if you're going to bring back Rock and it's going to be complete shit, the feud, then I'm not watching. But with Daniel Bryan, it would make sense. But it seems to me with Daniel Bryan, it's more of a second choice for me if Daniel Bryan is going to be involved in the feud between Roman. I think only time will tell as far as like whoever wins the Royal Rumble, or whoever later on is the favorable guy around that time. But also, if you're also looking at this point, I don't know how long Seth Rollins will be gone. Seth Rollins is going to be gone for a while. Who knows if he might be hinted coming back as Royal Rumble, and him dropping off that Messiah look and coming back as Seth freaking Rollins, and then have him feud against Roman Reigns, have that history as well as of the Shield. Again, have those guys feud. Or another one, I can go a little bit crazy, but since they're building this guy as well, Dominic might be another choice. I mean, it looks like they're putting more stock in him. They're putting more faith in that guy, having him feud up against guys like Seth Rollins, Murphy. But if there's another guy who can feud with Roman, it could be Dominic as well. But those are just three choices. Daniel Bryan,
Eric, you don't have to anger RKJ like that. I think he's gonna get so mad at the fact that I'm not even gonna let him respond because we need to move to UFC. But I just know he's heated inside that you said that. I'll say another person.
I don't want to give ideas, but it's kind of plain as day right there. It's really
they definitely build them up. I don't think he's ready for that WrestleMania main event.
Because now it's out in the air, and if Vince sees it, he might think it. He might do something.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it, man.
And we need to have a conversation.
And he's gonna be like, an RKJ man, I'm gonna have a serious conversation with you.
I'm gonna take this down after 3 weeks, just in case it doesn't happen. Maybe we have the run of Kevin Owens possibly as a
Kevin Owens.
Maybe because he's never had that run before, and I think the fans would get behind Kevin Owens as a babyface facing Roman Reigns too. But real quick, RKJ.
Nick, real quick. Like, these are all very, very credible options for a babyface. Yeah. But Roman Reigns is such a high-quality heel that you need a high-quality babyface.
That's true. That's
WrestleMania. Like, this is Hulk Hogan NWO level style right here. Heel work right here. So you need a high-quality babyface to face Roman Reigns. And all these options, while they're good, they just seem underwhelming to me. I'm sorry. I hate to poke holes in something that's actually really, really good, but the fact of the matter is Roman Reigns is doing such a great job as a heel. He's so dominant as a heel. He's controlling his family so well in this narrative so well that he's above everybody else in the WWE right now. And that's just how it is. It's gotten tenfold since he's turned heel, and he's got this tribal chief gimmick. So I'm just saying, if Vince has this option of going to WrestleMania with the title, you need to have a very good babyface, and you better hurry up and build up that babyface because you don't actually have a lot of time to do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's going to be interesting. Love the wrestling talk, man. We went so long on this thing, but we had great discussions. I don't regret it at all. So let's move to UFC. Big event this past weekend, UFC 255, I believe it was. Yeah. It was headlined by Davison Figueiredo versus Alex Perez, a Dana White Contender Series flyweight fighter. Ended in the first round. Figueiredo just looks like a freaking monster again. And then we have the fight with Valentina Shevchenko and Jennifer Maia, the secondary headliner. Jennifer Maia actually winning a round against Valentina Shevchenko. Very, very impressive there. But every other round, very dominant by Valentina. We'll be looking to her next opponent, which is likely Jessica Andrade, which is definitely a step up from her last few opponents. And now Davison Figueiredo has a new opponent in Brandon Moreno, who also fought on this past Saturday's card. That fight's happened on December 12th. It's a quick turnaround. They're keeping both the guys in the United States. And that's going to now headline UFC 256 because, unfortunately, Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling got canceled, which was a fight, Eric, I was very excited about. That was a bantamweight legitimate barn burner. We have that fight, and then they've added Tony Ferguson and Charles Oliveira to that card. We also have plenty of cards to get to, but RKJ Man, I know you're very casual UFC fan, but give me your impression of Davison Figueiredo, because this is a guy that's relatively unknown a few months ago. Earlier this year, he's now becoming a UFC star.
Dare I say the next Khabib in that division? Dare I say it? I saw Rogan talking about it on ESPN, and he was talking about how he had, before this fight, an 84% finish rate. And I guess it went up after this. Like, the man is a monster. He's a beast. And he really provides some credibility in a division that a lot of fans have been very sour on, and rightfully so. It hasn't been the best division in the world, but he provides a lot of credibility in that division. And I'm really looking forward to this matchup with him and Brandon Moreno. And all I got to say is, Dana White, pay this man his $50,000 bonus, because he's carrying that division right now, and he's saving your ass in a situation where you desperately need him in a few weeks. He's willing to stay, cut weight, and do all this stuff. Pay this man his money, the money he actually deserves. Stop undercutting this man's pay. But yeah, it's very, very interesting to see a fighter like him just dominating that first round like that. That was phenomenal.
2 straight fights too.
He is a beast, and I cannot wait to see this fight with him and Brandon Moreno, right? Yeah, I can't wait to see that, because Brandon Moreno was a beast too in that preliminary match.
Yeah, so Eric, I'll toss it to you. We know a lot about Brandon Moreno. We know a lot about Davison Figueiredo. We look at that fight 3 weeks. Nobody has an advantage in this fight necessarily, unless there's an injury sustained in the next few weeks. Probably fairly limited preparation. Here's my question to you: does Brandon Moreno have a chance, being kind of a submission artist, against what seems to be a pound per pound a beast in Davison Figueiredo, a guy that just looks different than a lot of the other flyweights?
The only thing I can try to have Moreno try to avoid is that guillotine and any chokehold that Figueiredo will lock him in, because once he traps you into that chokehold, it's done. It's a good way to try to counter as much as you can up against a guy like Figueiredo, because he's on a roll. I've been on a rampage. I'm still having kind of nightmares of seeing that match between him and Benavidez.
Oh my God!
Yeah, if you remember,
it's so bad.
Not only beat him once, but twice. Another one, and what he did to Perez was just this. Geez, I'm like, okay, Figueiredo is right now just mowing through the division. So Moreno, is he going to be the next target? Well, if he's going to have to counter the chokes, the guillotine chokes, I hopefully that might be Moreno's chance. But other than that, I see Figueiredo as of right now, my stance, him mowing him down. But just counter. That's what I mean.
That's the thing with Moreno's. The reason he's a number one contender is because of his ground game, and so you always give it to a guy that has that. If this was a striker, I would give him no chance. I want to move on to this pay-per-view. Also, we have Tony Ferguson returning to face Charles Oliveira. Obviously, we have Khabib out there, retired or not, whatever. He's the top of the ranks. But, man, the rest of this division, I try not to cuss on this podcast as much, but holy fucking shit. Like, you have Gaethje, Poirier, Ferguson, Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor's ranked number 4 in this division. Dan Hooker, Charles Oliveira, Rafael Dos Anjos, Paul Felder. I mean, it is and the rest of the guys in the top 15 are would be considered top 5 guys in other divisions too. It's when you look at this fight, Eric, Ferguson Oliveira, it's almost like we need a tournament, right? We need a lightweight tournament. We have Conor McGregor and Poirier, which we'll talk about in January. We'll likely have a lot of these other fighters in the lightweight division fight again. We'll have Gaethje maybe. By the way, I forgot about Michael Chandler, who just started in the UFC. So what do you see from the lightweight division going forward if Khabib is in fact retired? Who do you see getting that next title shot? Is it the winner of this fight? Is it the winner of Conor McGregor Poirier? Is it the winner of another fight? Who do you think is looking for that next lightweight championship?
I mean, it looks like between Poirier and McGregor, whoever wins that one, it's kind of like an easy access, just due to the. I mean, I don't want to say like stardom, but as far as like viewership and just the way how it's been built up, it seems to me that whoever wins between Poirier and McGregor, they have like an easy title shot. But it would make sense between Ferguson and Oliveira. I think it would make sense for me, whoever wins between Ferguson and Oliveira. But if anything does happen, and Khabib hinting on Twitter saying that "see you soon, Dana." That's also
stop playing with us, bro.
It didn't take guessing it didn't take him that long, but I don't know what happened. But with that being said, Khabib hinting, don't know, not sure, confirm, cryptic message right there, coming back. It would make sense. Whoever wins between Poirier and McGregor would go. But for me personally, I think it's Ferguson Oliveira, whoever wins. But still, I don't know my thoughts on Ferguson Oliveira, because that one's a very dicey situation between those two, because it can go both ways. McGregor and Poirier, I think maybe the obvious one would favor, obviously, RKJ Man's guy. But as far as I know, I think it's still a little bit too early to tell. For me personally. But yeah, the lightweight division looks. It looks like it's getting stopped.
The best division. It's the best division in
next to welterweight. I think the welterweight has also been doing pretty good.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's just a ton of things now. So RKJ, now I'm gonna toss to you, because this is something you've been talking about for so long. And now imagine this scenario. This is how I'll pitch this to you. Conor McGregor whoops Dustin Poirier's ass. First round knockout. Now, me and Eric don't think that's happening. I would guess that Eric probably will put the bet on Poirier in that fight too. Poirier with that incredible performance against Dan Hooker. His only loss recently to Khabib, which you don't really knock anybody for. Conor McGregor wins that fight. Is it one of those things where, like, can you imagine if they had the interim title fight? Because I think the Dana White said that the Poirier-McGregor fight is not going to be the interim title fight as of right now. Now, if this meeting, like Eric said, between Khabib and him is a retirement meeting and him handing over the title, maybe they will, because those are the two top-ranked guys in the division fighting each other. So that should technically be the title fight. But imagine this. Imagine that is what happens. Or Conor McGregor goes and beats Dustin Poirier and then beats Justin Gaethje, and he's the interim title holder. And Khabib, hey, if you want to come back and be 30-0, you have to face Conor McGregor, or you don't get the title shot. Can you imagine that scenario happening in 2021? Like what are your thoughts on Khabib, and if Conor wins, what should happen? Even though there are guys like Gaethje and Ferguson who've never faced him before. Well, Gaethje has, and Gaethje lost. But there's guys like Ferguson out there that haven't faced him before. Still, would Conor need to face a Gaethje, face a Ferguson, or should he just leapfrog to that title shot?
I personally think he needs to leapfrog to that title shot. And I'm just thinking business-wise. I've always said, if you want your top draw, You want your top draw. And if 2021 means we got fans and Dana White gets full fans in that stadium because people are getting vaccinated, they're showing up with negative COVID tests, you've got to put your biggest matchup draw out there. And the biggest draw that it's been out there for years that people have been dying to see is the rematch between Conor McGregor and Khabib. That's what everybody wants to see. I mean, yes, you could do Conor McGregor and Ferguson to see what happens. You can try to do that fight. But I'm just letting you know you're going to have no fans for that fight. It's probably going to be no fans. I don't think we're going to probably get fans until later in the year with these UFC events. So if you want to do it, you can, or you can just wait off. I would just wait off and do Khabib versus McGregor at some point next year. I think it's got to happen at some point. It's going to happen. Like if Khabib wants to go 30-0, he's going to have to go through Conor McGregor. It just makes sense.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's it. The other name out there that would be someone that is not in the rankings is George St. Pierre, which would be an amazing fight as well. Again, without fans, that fight is some of these fights, Izzy versus John Jones, right? That's something where let's wait to have fans for that one. Conor McGregor, Khabib, let's wait to have fans for that one. George St. Pierre, Khabib is the same thing too. Let's have fans, let's do it somewhere. Now here's the rumor too. The rumor is that in Abu Dhabi, January 23rd, Conor versus Poirier, they're trying to get people in there. They're trying to get people in there possible. Now, they'll just do Fight Island like normal if they can't, because Dana White stated it's either all fans or no fans. So we're not getting, 2,000 people in the arena. Dana White just thinks that's kind of a waste of time, a waste of money. But so that's very interesting in that rank. But yeah, George St. Pierre would be the other person that possibly could face Khabib. In the meantime, though, we have, we have Tony Ferguson versus Charles Oliveira. We have Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. And then the next week, which is arguably a better fight card. This will be the last UFC event we talk about. And I'm just going to list the fights here. We have our boy Khamzat Chimaev, who is destroying everybody, fighting every 3 weeks, versus Leon Edwards. He finally gets the test of a true UFC top-ranked fighter. You have Stephen Thompson versus Jeff Neal. Greg Hardy's on this card. Greg Hardy's looked better than ever. Marlon Moraes is on this card. You have Marlon Vera, shout out Irvine, he trains in Irvine, versus Jose Aldo. And even on the preliminary card on ESPN Plus, Chaos Williams is the main event of the preliminary card. Eric, how excited are you of this card?
Stacked.
It's so stacked.
Can I say? I mean, it's really hard to pick out which one is my favorite, but as of right now, oh man, it's like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. It's like which one do I pick? But damn, I'm definitely I'm ecstatic for this one. I don't want to give my results or anything like that. I don't want to do anything like that until we get to it. So hopefully Jesse, gets better. Everything comes better.
If he's doing better, he's feeling better. Oh, he's gonna be like, we'll do something live probably. We'll have to figure something out for that kind of card. That is very interesting. RKJ, Chaos Williams. Do you know of this man? Do you know of what this man has done?
No, but I love his name.
Do you know what Khamzat Chimaev has done? Do you know what this man has done?
No, I do not, but I love that name.
That's RKJ Man's homework. Go find out. Go specifically Chaos Williams versus the last guy he fought. Very tough name to pronounce, so I'm not going to say it. His last fight. I'm just going to say you have less than a minute of watching time. That's all you need to watch. It's less than a minute, so it's a quick fix. And Khamzat, I believe, combined fights is about the length of a normal fight of all his fights in the UFC, and they've all happened within the pandemic, which is crazy. So he's fought like 6 times. And so that's your homework, RKJ. Now, Eric, I know you said you didn't want to give predictions, but is Leon Edwards too much of a test for Khamzat at this point? Do you think he still needed someone lower, or do you think Leon Edwards, a top 5 fighter, is the good way to go with this?
I think the last time, the last time we saw Leon Edwards, I was kind of putting more like faith in him, but I don't know, like the last time that he fought wasn't I guess you can say like I didn't seem to like it because it was like a unanimous decision between him and RDA.
Yeah.
But I think I kind of expected him to knock out RDA, but I guess I expected him more. With him and Hamzat, hopefully I'm pronouncing it right.
You're saying, yeah. K is silent.
You know, he's going to be in there for a rude awakening if he doesn't get prepared for Hamzat. I think Leon Edwards at the last performance that he had, it may have showcased that it might have a chance for Hamzat to really finish him off, like knock him out. I really think that Hamzat might have a chance against Edwards just based on his last performance. But if Edwards doesn't deliver against Hamzat, then he's in for a rude awakening because as of right now, my stance, who I'm going for at the moment, as of right now, would have to be Hamzat. Knockout.
The guy is impressive as ever. Now, speaking of knockouts, we need to transition to this because we're running on time here on this podcast. Speaking of knockouts, we may or may see one this Saturday. And it's not going to be from Curtis Blades and Derek Lewis, which is a UFC fight, which should be very entertaining. But I don't know with this other thing if people are going to watch that much. It's Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. And we had a podcast because we were so excited about this a few months ago. And slowly but surely, the promotion on this is tapered off. And now we have these rules and regulations by the California State Athletic Association. So I'm going to just list what this fight is, and then I'll get your guys' take on it. Because I'm going to watch this no matter what. And I'll just see what happens. I'm interested to see Jake Paul and Nate Robinson. There's a huge height advantage there that I want to see. I want to see that fight, and so I'll watch this card for sure. But here are the rules and regulations for Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. No official judges, no cumulative score, no winner announced. No, the bout will take place over 8 rounds at 2 minutes each. The boxers will not be required to wear headgear. Tyson and Jones will be wearing 12-ounce gloves. If either boxer suffers a bad cut, the exhibition is over. Both athletes had to undergo complete medical testing in order to be cleared for this bout, and they were both tested by not USADA but something called VADA, which is and they did not test weed because Mike Tyson has a weed ranch. So so RKJ. No, actually, I'm gonna ask Eric this because I know RKJ is gonna explode. So Eric, your thoughts on this? After hearing that and hearing that we're all those rules, what are your thoughts?
What's the next rule? Social distance? Have masks on? What else? I mean, come on, they still got a week. Surprise me with another rule. Man, what can I say? I guess this is something that people, obviously we've all been looking forward to, but since they've explained the rules, I can see why a lot of people have had like their expectations kind of die down. Maybe the hype has been lowering down due to the regulations and what they should not do and how they should do it. It's basically we're just watching two dudes who train at a gym just spar. That's what I'm seeing. It's not going to be a legit. It's not going to be a legit fight. It's not going to be. It's going to be Mike Tyson being held back. It's going to be Roy Jones Jr. being held back, and it's disappointing. And because I was looking forward to seeing the alter ego of Mike Tyson, and then also seeing Roy Jones Jr. Coming back at it as well. Roy Jones Jr., who just kept boxing until 2018. He was one of the only guys who could still box at 51 years old. And Mike Tyson, he hasn't fought since like 2005. So for about maybe 15, 16 years from now, it's been a while since Tyson's been in the ring. But Roy Jones is still in. He's still fresh off of his last fight a couple years ago. So it's very interesting. It would have been interesting to see how the fights would be showcased. But I guess this is just nothing but just a friendly exhibition match. No one gets killed. No one gets cut up. No one gets gets knocked out, I guess, like, man, this is going to be a very interesting one. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as far as like as a boxing fan, it does look good on paper, but minus the regulations and the rules and whatnot. But as far as like maybe the hype goes, for me, it also has kind of died down. I could see why there was not much hype as of right now for the two fighters to come back. This is something that we've been anticipating for, but it's just something that I guess it's very mixed for me. It's very mixed. Do I look forward to it? Absolutely, but not really. Okay, whatever. I guess maybe they put it like after Thanksgiving, but just to make it like a treat for us. But I think I look more forward to Thanksgiving than the fight itself. Then I guess it's that way, the other way around. But yeah, it's very mixed for me as of right now.
RKJ, now I want to put something else I didn't mention that it is considered an exhibition because the California State Athletic Commission doesn't like the idea of two 50-year-olds in the ring against each other. Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. have said that they are going to fight this like a normal fight. Two questions for you, and I know this is bad journalistic work here. Two questions. Do you think that's the truth? And then just give your thoughts also on just this fight and what has ended up happening with these rules. But do you think that Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson will go for it and will go for knockouts in the first few rounds?
First of all, Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson, excuse my language, they're both bullshitting. Okay, they're not taking this fight seriously. If they were taking this fight seriously, we would see them on every single syndicated show out there, all the major networks, all these major shows, and they would be hyping this thing up. I have not seen that in months. I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, but I think it has something to do actually with the rules. Mm-hmm. The rules are absolutely the definition of stupid. I have no clue why you would have these two major stars fight each other and you basically say, oh, just lightly touch each other on the face. It just doesn't make any sense. They would just better off be hug each other, do a musical performance in the middle of the damn ring, okay, than to freaking just make the decision to try to have an actual fight, because it just doesn't make any sense. I hyped this up months ago. I said how the 3 generations of this family will be watching this fight, and maybe that could happen, but I'm just letting you know they ruined it by, number one, moving the date. Everybody was excited. They had the perfect date. It was the day before the NFL season was supposed to start. Now, what you have is a conundrum, because while we're still in this pandemic and lockdown, sports is just raging like nobody's business. Yeah. And the NFL has been, in my opinion, fucking fantastic. The NBA, you got free agency. Go Lakers, by the way. We got some major picks. Okay. And then also you've got a situation going with college basketball starting, college football. If they can get players who don't test positive for the Rona to play, I mean, it could be really, really great. So the fact of the matter is there's too much stuff going on. And then you're asking me to pay $50 in the middle of a global pandemic.
$50, really?
For $49.99, if you will, but $50, rounded up to 50, for something that's going to be a glorified sparring session. I'm sorry, I made this mistake years ago with Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather Jr. I don't want to make this mistake again with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. I'm sorry, I just don't want to make that mistake again, and it's really sad because I was really looking forward to this fight. But all these rules, like, we're in a global pandemic, man. Just let these dudes box. They're grown men. Let them box 12 full rounds. And if it's good enough, then who knows? Mike Tyson can go face somebody else. But now, like, it's a glorified sparring session, and there won't be a winner. I can understand why people would not buy this, and it's really sad because a lot of people are invested in this fight. I was too a couple months ago, but now it's just a complete disaster, and also it's all because of the rules. These are grown men. These are grown adults who fought a lot of major fights, big time pay-per-view fights in their career. Let them go out there and box. I mean, we're like, what else could happen? Like, just let them go out there and box, and whatever happens, happens. But these rules are just dumb. Like, I wish they would just say, F these rules, we're just going to go fight. But I don't think they're going to do that because they might not get paid as much or whatever else will happen. The fight will get called off. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's unfortunate and it's funny. The only reason I knew about these rules is because of a press conference with Dana White the other day. Dana White didn't know anything about these rules either, and I was like, wait a minute, what rules? And I looked it up, and I'm like, wait, what? This is what this. So like, not only has the promotion been so lackluster, they snuck in all these rules to hide it from people, and now I think it's being exposed a little bit, and hopefully we expose it a little bit too, and don't have people wasting their money. Hey, now here's the thing, I'm holding out hope. I hope Tyson knocks him the hell out, or I hope Roy Jones Jr. knocks Tyson out. Like, that would be really interesting. And there's a winner if that happens. And that's all I'll say right there. So I'm interested in that, and I am interested to see if Jake Paul can legitimately box, or actually really if Nate Robinson can legitimately box, but I know Jake Paul can. So I'm interested to see that fight, at least on the undercard, whatever that ends up being. Like, those guys are such characters, but. Yeah, no. As far as Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., I'm holding out hope. Let's get knockout. Now, like we always do, when we got boxing matches, we gotta make predictions. So let's give our little predictions, guys.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm holding out. We have to. I'm holding out hope. I'm gonna go Tyson knockout round 1. That's where I'm gonna go. RKJ.
I know I was hyping up Tyson a lot and thinking about it, but I watched some highlights before we got on Skype. And of Roy Jones Jr., that dude's got some tricks under his sleeve. They call him Captain Hook for a reason. I'm going with Roy Jones Jr. if they actually let them box, if they let these grown men box. Going with Roy Jones Jr. I mean, Mike Tyson changed up his diet and everything, and he's doing all these little things, and that kind of messes with your body a little bit. And I don't know if he'll have the stamina going into the later rounds. He should. It's 2 minutes each. But if he doesn't have the stamina going into the later rounds, I think Roy Jr. will be the better boxer, the more in shape boxer, the more aggressive boxer, and I think he's going to beat him.
Eric, what's your final prediction? RKJ has Roy Jones Jr. I got Mike Tyson. Break up the break it up here.
Just by thinking about it during my karate days, I remember when we used to spar. Sometimes when we spar, it's like, okay, it's like a friendly competition, but then you start to take it seriously little by little. Just that one hit is just to set you off. So seeing Roy Jones and Tyson box before in the past, all you need is just one little, quick hit, hard hit in the face or in the chin, and that's when you take it seriously. And I've heard reports about Mike Tyson electrocutes himself before he trains. So, maybe that might be another factor for Tyson to get the edge. I know it's pretty crazy. He electrocutes himself before his sparrings, or I guess when
RKJ, we should do that before we start every podcast. You should electrocute.
That's right.
Put some water on a plug and plug it into the wall real quick.
That's right.
Do that. I'm not doing that. I ain't dying.
It will burn off all that stubble that you have.
Of course. So
this pandemic stubble right here.
I think I think Roy does. He may have the edge, but as far as right now goes, and just by seeing how Mike has been moving, how he's been training, and how he's been doing his routine workouts, I think Tyson will do it, but not in the first round. He's going to have a hard time with Roy, so I think it's going to be in the 4th round when he knocks him out. But it's more of a stoppage, if you ask me. I think he's going to have to tire out Roy Jones when that happens. And then who knows afterwards. I've seen Evander Holyfield train, so Evander Holyfield, he's saying, all right, who do we have?
Eric, we're getting into Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz territory here. We're getting into that territory of dumb fights.
I've seen Evander train. He looks good, but I don't know.
He does look good. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. All right, well, we'll end the podcast there with Eric with actual analysis of the fight that might not even be a fight, and us talking about stubble midway through it. So that's the way we'll end this podcast. Hey, guys, good podcast today. This is a lot of good talk. Again,
long, but it was good. It's good
Jesse, we know you're watching, so we want you back, bro. Tell us when you can. Tell us when you feel good to come back, and we we're there for you and all that stuff. Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr., the best exhibition ever in the history of boxing. And then, of course, we have a lot of big UFC events happening in the future. We'll see what happens with Survivor Series and WWE. Next week, we will be talking about what happened with Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson. and we will be discussing AEW's December 2nd card, Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega, for the title. This is potentially the biggest match since AEW's debut on Dynamite. Well, on a Dynamite for sure, this is the biggest match. Might even be the biggest title fight they've produced. So we'll talk about that and whatever else ends up happening in the world of MMA, boxing, or actually we also have Errol Spence and Garcia as well. That's a legitimate boxing match that will happen at Cowboy Stadium, I believe. It might have fans.
Yeah.
That should be interesting too. So we'll talk about all those and much more. RKJ, take it away.
Hey man, like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, raise a glass in the sky and salute the ring generals.
It's the Sauce, Alex Zane, and you're watching the Ring General Podcast. Turn this man around. Subscribe, like, and comment.
Well, raise a glass in the sky and salute the ring generals.
That's right.